I never imagined I would be the kind of woman telling her story online, exposing the quiet collapse of her own marriage and family. For years, I believed loyalty was something you could depend on when blood and vows were involved. I believed love meant safety, but betrayal does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it whispers, hides behind smiles, and sits beside you at family dinners. This is my confession, not to seek pity, but to release the weight of a truth I carried alone for too long. What happened to me unfolded slowly, painfully, and close to home. It involved trust, denial, proof, and a kind of karma that didn't need shouting to be powerful. If you've ever felt your instincts warning you while everyone else told you to stay quiet, this story is for you. I never thought betrayal would come from inside my own family, but that was exactly what made it hurt in a way I still struggle to describe. My life before everything unraveled was ordinary in the best sense. I was married to Daniel for 8 years, and while we weren't perfect, I believed we were solid. We had routines, shared jokes, and an understanding that came from growing together. Family gatherings were frequent because Daniel was close to his brother, Aaron, and his wife, Marissa. Marissa was the kind of woman everyone liked right away. She laughed easily, remembered small details, and always showed up with something thoughtful in her hands. I used to say she was the glue that held our extended family together. Marissa's coming early to help with dinner, Daniel said one Saturday morning, scrolling through his phone. That's sweet of her, I replied, genuinely meaning it. Tell her thank you. She already knows, he said quickly, locking his screen. I didn't notice the way his voice shifted then. At least not consciously. Marissa and I spent a lot of time together. We texted about recipes, holidays, and family plans. She called me sis and hugged me like she meant it. I trusted her around Daniel without hesitation. Why wouldn't I? She was family. She was married to his brother. The idea that something inappropriate could exist between them felt almost insulting, like suggesting a crime in a church. One quiet Sunday afternoon changed everything. Marissa had stopped by to drop off a dessert she'd made for Aaron, who was running late from work. She left her tablet on the kitchen counter when she went outside to take a call. I was in the middle of cooking and needed a recipe I'd bookmarked for later. My phone was dead, so I picked up her tablet without thinking. That's when a notification slid across the screen. A message preview appeared, short but unmistakable, with a heart emoji at the end. The sender's name was Daniel. My stomach dropped so suddenly I had to grab the counter to steady myself. It's probably nothing, I whispered out loud, like saying it could make it true. I told myself there had to be context. Maybe it was a joke, maybe it was a family plan I didn't know about. I unlocked the screen before I could stop myself. The messages weren't graphic or explicit, but they weren't innocent either. They were familiar, intimate in a way that didn't belong between a husband and his sister-in-law. You made today easier, one message read. I miss you already, said another. My hands started shaking. I locked the tablet and set it down like it had burned me. When Marissa came back inside, she smiled like nothing in the world was wrong. Sorry about that, she said. Aaron needed help with something. No problem, I replied, forcing my voice to stay steady. She picked up her tablet and for a split second her eyes flicked to my face, searching. I looked away first. That night I didn't say anything to Daniel. I watched him instead. I noticed how often he checked his phone, how he turned it face down when he sat next to me, how distracted he seemed when I spoke. You okay? I asked him while we brushed our teeth. Yeah, he said. Just tired. Over the next few weeks, things that once felt harmless started lining up in ways that made my chest feel tight. Marissa took calls outside during family dinners. Daniel suddenly had passwords on devices he'd never locked before. Conversations stopped when I entered rooms. Laughter softened. Eye contact broke. One evening I asked him directly, "Are you hiding something from me?" He laughed, but it sounded forced. "Why would you ask that?" "I don't know," I said. "I just feel like something's off." "You're imagining things," he replied quickly. "You've been stressed lately." That sentence stayed with me. You're imagining things. It echoed every time my instincts tried to speak. I started doubting myself. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe I'd misunderstood the messages. Maybe marriage had made me insecure. But deep down, something refused to settle. I felt like a stranger in my own home, watching my life from a distance as if it belonged to someone else. One afternoon, Marissa called me unexpectedly. "Hey sis," she said cheerfully. "You free to talk?" "Sure," I said. "I just wanted to check on you," she continued. "You've seemed quiet lately." "I'm fine," I answered, though my voice betrayed me. She paused. "You know you can tell me anything, right?" The irony of that moment nearly broke me. "Thanks," I said softly. After we hung up, I sat alone on the couch, staring at the wall. I didn't want to believe what my mind was connecting. The thought of a relative's affair existing so close to me felt unreal, almost absurd. But the silence around me was growing louder, heavier, and impossible to ignore. Late one night, I lay awake listening to Daniel breathe beside me. I wondered when he had stopped being fully present. I wondered how long I had been the only one who didn't know the truth. I realized then that whatever was happening wasn't going to disappear if I ignored it. I was standing at the edge of something painful and irreversible, and even though fear wrapped itself tightly around my chest, I knew I was already stepping forward, whether I was ready or not. Once doubt took hold, it refused to leave me alone. Every casual glance at Daniel, every laugh Marissa let slip around him, every time his phone vibrated in the other room, it all became part of a pattern that I couldn't unsee. I told myself I wasn't spying. I was just noticing, paying attention to what had always been there but somehow hidden. I started keeping quiet notes on my phone, little observations I couldn't share with anyone. Marissa leaves the room to answer calls. Daniel locks his phone quickly. Dinner conversation halts abruptly when I enter. I didn't know if I wanted proof or if I just needed to know I was losing my mind. It started with small tests. One evening, I pretended to leave the house for a walk but instead parked a few blocks away and watched. Daniel left for work around 6 p.m., saying he was heading to a client meeting. I followed discreetly, keeping my distance. My heart was hammering in my chest. I kept asking myself if I was imagining everything, if my paranoia had finally taken control. Then I saw him. Across the street from the cafe where Marissa occasionally volunteered for a charity event. He stopped, waited, and then she appeared from nowhere, smiling, carrying a small bag. Their laughter was too easy, their hands brushing in ways that made my stomach twist. I kept my car hidden behind a bush and pulled out my phone, snapping a few photos from the distance. This can't be real, I whispered to myself. This isn't happening. But it was. Every smile, every casual touch, every laugh they shared in perfect sync confirmed my worst fears. My hands were shaking. I felt dizzy, nauseated. I wanted to run, but my legs refused. I wanted to confront them then and there, but I knew if I did, I'd lose control. Later that night, back at home, I sat at the kitchen table with the photos spread out before me. I could hear Daniel in the bedroom, humming softly, oblivious. I rehearsed confronting him in my head, practicing questions and statements I could use without breaking into hysteria. I needed clarity, I needed answers. I needed him to look me in the eyes and tell me the truth. Daniel, I said finally, stepping into the bedroom, we need to talk. He looked up, startled. About what? I held up my phone, these. Explain this. He went pale, a hand hovering near his mouth. It's not what it looks like. Not what it looks like, I repeated sharply. You're sitting in a cafe with Marissa, holding hands, laughing like nothing matters except each other. How is that not what it looks like? He looked away, silent. We were just catching up. Catching up? My voice shook. You've never caught up like that with a family member, ever, not me, not anyone. I didn't mean to, you didn't mean to what? Betray me, betray our marriage. I felt my chest tighten, my stomach curling with tension. He sighed heavily. I didn't think it mattered. I didn't think it would hurt. It matters, Daniel, I said, almost yelling now. It matters to me, it matters to our family. And yet you still did it, over and over, hiding it, lying to my face. I could see the shame in his eyes, but it didn't soften the betrayal. He tried to reach for my hand. I pulled back sharply. You don't get to reach for me right now, I said. Not until we talk about the truth. The next few days were a blur of whispered apologies, evasive conversations, and passive-aggressive comments that made me feel insane. Marissa sent me a message as well, attempting to deflect responsibility. It's just a misunderstanding, it read. Please don't make this bigger than it needs to be. We're family. Family. The word tasted bitter in my mouth. Was this what family had become? Secret meetings, hidden messages, and rehearsed apologies. I stared at my phone, scrolling through messages, rereading them, looking for patterns, for anything I might have missed. Every time I thought I had evidence, it felt insufficient. But my instincts screamed that there was more, something bigger lurking beneath the surface, something neither Daniel nor Marissa had admitted yet. I remembered the late nights, the whispered phone calls, the moments they laughed together when they thought no one was watching. And then I realized, the truth wasn't just in the photos or the messages. It was in the patterns, the little inconsistencies that built a trail like breadcrumbs leading me straight to them. One night I confronted Daniel again. Are you still hiding something? I asked, voice quiet but firm. He looked at me for a long moment. I don't know if you want the full truth, he said. Try me, I replied, my voice steady. He hesitated, then sighed. There's more than just what you saw. My stomach sank. More? How much more? He ran a hand through his hair. I didn't mean for it to get complicated. I swear I didn't think anyone would find out. And yet here we are, I said softly. I already know something. I need to know everything. He looked down, shame and fear battling in his eyes. Marissa, she's been telling her husband she's just devoted, that nothing's wrong. But she's been meeting me. I felt my world tilt sideways. I wanted to scream, to cry, to throw something, but I stayed still. I wanted clarity more than chaos. Did she know you were married? I asked, keeping my voice calm. Yes, he said quietly. I told her. She knew everything. You're serious? I whispered. Yes, he admitted. I didn't plan for it to go on like this. I didn't think anyone would figure it out. I messed up. I sank into a chair, heart pounding. Messed up? I asked, almost laughing at the absurdity. Do you know what this feels like, to trust someone completely and have them shatter it behind your back? I'm sorry, he said again. I truly am. You say that, I said, but do you even understand how deep this goes, how it touches every part of our family? He looked down, silent. I ran my hands through my hair. I can't believe Marissa, of all people, she's family. She was supposed to be someone I could trust completely. She is, she was. Don't you dare speak as if she had nothing to do with this, I shouted, tears pricking my eyes. She chose to do this, to lie, to manipulate, and you chose to participate. I know, he said quietly. I know, and I hate myself for it. I stood, pacing the small bedroom. Hate isn't enough. It won't undo the late nights, the secret texts, the feeling that I can't trust anyone I thought I loved. He didn't respond. He knew I was right. Over the next few days, the tension grew unbearable. I didn't know who to talk to. I avoided calling Marissa, avoided speaking about the situation to friends or family. I kept a careful eye, silently collecting evidence, noting times, dates, phrases. I had to be sure. I couldn't confront blindly. Then came a message from Marissa's husband, Aaron, completely unaware. Hey, do you know why Marissa keeps leaving early from family dinners? She says it's work stuff, but it's odd, right? I felt my pulse race. There was an opening, a crack I could use, but I needed more proof, more certainty. I couldn't let this spiral out of control before I had something solid. I remembered the cafe, I remembered the photos. I remembered how natural they seemed together, how unaware of the world they thought they were. That scene haunted me. I couldn't unsee it. I decided then that I would watch, quietly, carefully, collecting what I needed. I wouldn't confront until I had undeniable proof. Not for revenge yet, not for confrontation yet, but for clarity. That night Daniel tried to approach me. I know you're upset, he said. Let's just talk this through calmly. I don't know if I can, I replied, keeping my voice even. I need time. You don't need time, you need trust. You need to believe I didn't mean it. Trust is gone, Daniel, I said, shaking my head. You took it and you handed it to someone else. How am I supposed to believe anything now? His face fell. I didn't mean to hurt you like this. But you did, I said softly. And you're not the only one. She chose this too. Marissa chose this. Don't forget that. He stayed quiet, staring at the floor, and I felt a bitter mix of anger and sorrow settle in my chest. I knew the next steps would define everything. How I responded, how I confronted, how I reclaimed what had been stolen. I spent that night awake, planning. Checking, rechecking, cross-referencing everything I had seen, everything I had heard. I wasn't ready to explode in anger. I needed strategy, patience, proof that couldn't be denied. And then I realized they were hiding something bigger, something even I hadn't uncovered yet. The thought sent a shiver down my spine. Whatever this was, it wasn't just about stolen moments or secret messages. There was more, and I had to find it before I acted. I whispered to myself in the dark, I will know the truth no matter what it takes, because the truth was the only thing that could save me from the nightmare unfolding in my own home. After the confrontation with Daniel, I realized that rushing into anything would only backfire. I needed patience, strategy, and the element of surprise. Acting too soon would alert Marissa or Daniel that I knew more than I let on, and I wasn't ready to lose my advantage. For days, I pretended to be uncertain, confused, even willing to forgive. I smiled at family gatherings, laughed when jokes were told, and carried on as though life was normal, all the while watching, listening, and quietly documenting everything. I had to learn the patterns, the tiny inconsistencies, the moments where the truth slipped through without intention. I saved screenshots of their messages, noted times of phone calls, and remembered dates that didn't align with Daniel's excuses. Each small piece added to a growing puzzle that I knew would eventually become undeniable evidence. Hey, you've seemed quiet lately, Marissa said one evening when we were alone in the kitchen. Just tired, I replied lightly, keeping my tone even. You know you can tell me anything, right? She added, leaning against the counter. Yes, I know, I said with a smile, careful not to betray the storm brewing inside me. It was almost cruel how easily I could play the part of the oblivious wife while collecting evidence in plain sight. I even spoke with a family friend who worked closely with Daniel. Have you noticed anything odd with his schedule? I asked casually over coffee. They frowned. Now that you mention it, there were a few business trips he mentioned that I never saw him on. Odd timing for someone who usually keeps you informed. That was the twist I hadn't expected. Daniel's lies weren't just with Marissa, they extended to his work life too. It meant the affair was deeper, more calculated, and involved deception on multiple fronts. I felt a cold determination settle in. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was a web of lies stretching further than anyone had realized. I began crafting a plan, one that would expose the truth publicly but carefully, ensuring no one could twist it into blame on me. I invited both families to a small dinner, seemingly ordinary with casual conversation and laughter. Everyone would be present, including Aaron, Marissa's husband, completely unaware of his wife's duplicity. During the dinner, I asked Daniel to help with the table settings. Sure, he said, unsuspecting. Marissa was busy in the kitchen, checking dishes, chatting with my mother. Everything okay? She asked cheerfully. Fine, I said softly, placing a stack of napkins on the table. My pulse quickened. Tonight would change everything. Once everyone was seated, I excused myself briefly, stepping outside under the pretense of taking a call. I returned with the printed screenshots, the records, and the messages. My hands trembled slightly, but my voice was steady. Everyone, can I have your attention for a moment? I began, placing the papers carefully on the table. What's going on? Daniel whispered nervously. Please just listen, I said calmly. I have something important to share. I laid out the messages, the photos, the timelines. I explained without embellishment the inconsistencies I had uncovered, the lies, and the secret meetings. I didn't want to believe it, I said, voice catching slightly. But the truth has a way of coming out whether we're ready or not. Marissa's face paled. You can't, she started, but I cut her off. I'm not here to accuse or to yell, I said. I'm here to let everyone see the truth and to let those who were deceived decide for themselves. Aaron, her husband, stared at the papers, confusion and hurt spreading across his face. Marissa, is this true? He asked softly. She opened her mouth but no words came. She looked to Daniel for help but he stayed silent, unable to deny anything now. I didn't mean for it to go this far, Daniel whispered. You didn't mean for it to go this far? Aaron asked, disbelief in his tone. Do you understand what this means? Tears welled in my eyes, but I held them back. I couldn't let emotions cloud the moment. This was about truth, clarity, and justice, not revenge born of anger. Marissa finally spoke, her voice trembling. I didn't want to hurt anyone, it just happened. It just happened, Aaron repeated, shock and pain mixed in his tone. For how long? How many lies? Daniel finally admitted, voice low. It started months ago, it wasn't planned, but we got carried away. I know that doesn't make it right. Aaron sank into his chair, face buried in his hands. I trusted you, all of you, he muttered. I felt the weight lift slightly. The truth was out, undeniable, and now it was up to them to face the consequences. I hadn't shouted. I hadn't humiliated anyone unnecessarily. I had simply let the evidence speak for itself, allowing karma to do its work. Thank you for being honest, I said finally, looking at Daniel. Even if honesty comes late, it's still important. Aaron looked at me with gratitude in his eyes. Thank you for showing me. I don't know how to process this yet. You will, I said softly. It hurts now, but the truth is better than continued lies. I watched as the family absorbed the revelations. Some cried, some sat silently, and some just stared, trying to process the betrayal. I felt a strange calm wash over me. This was the turning point. The lies could no longer hide behind smiles, small talk, or rehearsed excuses. Marissa's husband had every right to be angry. Daniel had every reason to feel ashamed, and I had the right to see the truth without denial clouding it. After a long pause, Aaron spoke again, voice steadier this time. I need time. We all need time. Yes, I agreed. Time and reflection, that's the only way forward. As the dinner continued, awkward and tense, I realized something vital. I had regained control, not through anger or vengeance, but through patience and careful planning. By letting them underestimate me, by allowing them to continue believing their secrets were safe, I had ensured the truth landed where it could no longer be ignored. I excused myself for a moment, stepping into the kitchen to breathe. My hands were trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally seeing justice take shape. I had known there was more to uncover, and the twist, the realization that Daniel had lied even about business trips, had strengthened my resolve. I knew there were no shortcuts, no easy fixes. But tonight I had begun setting things right. Returning to the table, I caught Aaron's eye. His expression had softened slightly, a mixture of grief and relief. Thank you, he said quietly again. I nodded. The truth can't be ignored forever, it always comes out. Marissa still hadn't spoken, and I didn't rush her. She had to face the consequences of her choices herself. Daniel sat silently, guilt etched on his face, realizing that his attempts to minimize the damage had failed. After dessert, I helped clear the table silently, keeping my composure, feeling the weight of the past weeks slowly shifting. I had acted not from spite but from necessity. Their deception had been clever, but it had a fatal flaw. It relied on my ignorance. That ignorance was gone now. Later that night, after everyone had left, Daniel and I sat in the living room. "I don't know what happens next," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "You'll have to face it," I replied calmly. "All of it." "And Marissa?" he asked. "She'll have to face herself," I said. No one can escape the truth forever. I knew the path forward would be difficult. Relationships had been fractured, trust had been broken, and hearts had been wounded. But the first step toward closure, toward justice, had been taken. I had orchestrated a situation where the truth could no longer hide, and that alone felt like a victory. As I closed the kitchen cabinets and turned off the lights, I whispered to myself, "This is only the beginning. The rest will come out in time." I went to bed that night feeling a strange combination of exhaustion and relief. The plan had worked, the evidence had spoken, and the truth was finally unavoidable. The next steps would involve confrontation, reflection, and consequences, but for the first time in months, I felt like I was not powerless. This was the moment I realized that patience and careful observation were as potent as anger and retaliation. Sometimes the best revenge, or rather the best justice, is simply allowing truth to shine brightly enough that lies cannot survive. And even though the night was quiet, I knew that the next chapter, the fallout and resolution, was coming, and I was ready to face it head on. The aftermath of that dinner was like waking from a nightmare I had been living in for months. The air in the house felt heavier, charged with tension, unspoken words, and the weight of consequences finally landing where they belonged. Marissa's husband, Aaron, sat at the dining table for hours, reviewing the screenshots, the messages, the timelines I had carefully collected. His face shifted through disbelief, sorrow, and anger. Daniel sat quietly beside me, guilt written on every line of his face. I watched as he finally admitted the full truth, the unfiltered story that he had tried to hide from everyone, including himself. "I thought I could manage it, that no one would find out," he confessed softly, voice breaking. "I was wrong, I know I've broken everything." Aaron finally looked up, tears streaking his face. "You lied to me, to everyone," he said, voice trembling. "How could you do that, Marissa? How could you let this happen?" Marissa opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. She couldn't explain away months of hidden meetings, careful lies, and betrayals that stretched beyond just Daniel and me. She had no excuse left. The room was silent except for the occasional shuffle of papers and the deep breathing of a family grappling with truth. I didn't want anyone to get hurt," she finally murmured, almost whispering. "Not getting caught doesn't count as not hurting anyone," I said firmly, my voice steady though my heart ached. "Actions have consequences, and it's time to face them." The next few days were heavy with conversation. Daniel and I sat for hours talking about everything: how it happened, why it happened, and what it meant for our marriage. I realized that staying in a relationship built on deception was impossible. I had to step away for my own self-respect and healing. Daniel begged me to reconsider, promising change, but I had learned something crucial. Love without trust is fragile, and trust once broken cannot simply be repaired with words. Aaron confronted Marissa gently but firmly. "You have to face this," he said. "I need to understand the truth. We need to decide what comes next, but lying is over." Marissa nodded, silent, overwhelmed by the realization of the life she had damaged. The full weight of her choices had finally reached her. I saw the spark of reckoning in her eyes, a silent acknowledgement that the web of lies she had spun could no longer protect her. During those long discussions, I noticed something. Honesty, even painful, felt like liberation. Daniel was filled with shame but no longer hiding. Aaron had the chance to see the truth for himself and begin processing it. Marissa could no longer hide behind charm or excuses. And I finally could breathe, knowing I had exposed deception without being cruel or vindictive. The family started to adjust to a new reality. Boundaries were set. Conversations became clearer, with honesty as the foundation. We learned to interact without the pretense of perfection, allowing space for healing and reflection. I focused on rebuilding my life, leaning on close friends who reminded me of my strength, my worth, and my ability to stand on my own. Each day, the feeling of betrayal grew a little smaller, replaced by clarity and a sense of empowerment. One afternoon, as I sat with a cup of tea, I reflected on the lessons I had learned. Betrayal hurts most when it comes from those we trust completely, but it also teaches us to listen to our instincts. Silence may protect the wrong people, but speaking up, carefully, decisively, restores balance. Karma isn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it quietly reveals the truth and allows everyone to face it for what it is. Watching the consequences unfold wasn't about celebration. It was about the natural order of honesty reclaiming its place. Daniel and I remained distant but civil, understanding that the love we once shared had been irreparably fractured. Marissa and Aaron faced months of adjustment, therapy, and reflection. And I, standing in the middle of the aftermath, felt stronger, wiser, and unburdened by secrets I once carried alone. I realized that while betrayal leaves scars, it also illuminates resilience. It forces you to reassess who belongs in your life and who doesn't. Most importantly, it reminds you that protecting your own peace is not selfish, it's necessary. As I closed the door on that chapter of my life, I felt a sense of calm I hadn't known in months. The storm had passed, the truth had been revealed. And now, finally, there was clarity, healing, and a lesson etched deeply into my heart. Never ignore the whispers of intuition because they often know what the eyes cannot see.